Hi, I'm Kristi Dosh. I'm a former practicing attorney and the founder of businessofcollegesports.com and also NIL Island. And I want to chat with you today about hiring an agent or hiring the right agent because unfortunately there are good and bad agents, and it could actually be worse for you to have the wrong agent than to have no agent at all. So I'm often asked by athletes, how do I figure out if an agent is right for me? And I've developed a list of questions that if I were hiring an agent, and I've had both broadcast agents, I currently have a literary agent, and I've asked these questions or some form of these questions to the agents that I've hired, and it's helped me avoid agents who wouldn't have been right for me. Sometimes that means avoiding an agent who isn't reputable or who doesn't have your best interests at heart. Sometimes it just means signing with someone who really gets you and understands your brand and who you want to be and how you want to be perceived. And so these questions are meant to help you get to that right person. So the first question I always ask them is, how many clients do they currently have and how do they make sure that they have time for all those clients? Because one of the biggest complaints you will hear from people who are represented by agents, whether that's an author or an actor or a social media influencer, anyone who might have an agent, if you ask them their biggest complaint, it's probably going to be communication. And so we've got a few questions here geared at communication, but I want to know, how many clients do they have and how do they make sure that they make time for all those clients? And then on a related note, is that person that you're speaking to, the one who's trying to sign you, are they going to be the person who works with you directly? Or are you going to be working with someone on their team? Because when you hire a bigger agency, often the big name person will recruit you and get you on board, and then you never hear from them ever again because you get passed off to someone junior. Now, there are advantages to being in a big agency because sometimes that means there's different people there who have different areas of specialization, and you're going to get the benefit of all these different specialists versus having just a solo agent who's out on their own and is maybe just good at one or two things. But that's one of those questions you want to ask up front so that if you're signing with someone you feel really connected to and you're so excited to work with this person, but then you find out later you're never really going to talk to them again, you might end up being disappointed by the experience. Another kind of related question is, I would ask them if they represent any other clients who are similar to you. So, if you're a female gymnast, do they represent other female gymnasts? And if so, ask them how they're going to handle any potential conflicts of interest. So, I actually had a gymnast who took my NIL class that I teach at the University of Florida, and she was going to try to sign with an agent, and he actually ended up telling her he had decided not to represent her because he represented another UF gymnast. And he didn't want that conflict. If somebody came to him and they said, I want to hire a UF gymnast for this campaign, he didn't want to have to choose between the two of them. And I've asked that of literary agents. Do you have other authors who write books similar to mine? And what happens when a publisher tells you that they want a book like that? How are you going to decide which one of us to put out there? And absolutely, there are agents who specialize in, say, a specific sport. They only represent football athletes or they only represent basketball athletes. That's not a bad sign. It might mean they know that market really well, but ask them, have you had those conflicts of interest where you had to choose between your client, and how do you make that choice? And if the answer is they let the brand make the choice, then fine. If they're putting everyone out equally and the brand is making the choice, it is what it is. But you want to ask that question and see how they handle it. I would also ask them how many contracts they've negotiated. So currently, there is no required registration process for agents with the NCAA. There's a voluntary registration that began, but it's not required. And there's no real definition or requirement to call yourself an NIL agent. And so there are people out there holding themselves out as agents who actually have no real experience. They've never negotiated a contract. So I would specifically ask them, ballpark idea, how many contracts have you negotiated? I would also ask for specific examples of deals that they've negotiated for their clients, NIL deals that they've negotiated, because there's also a lot of folks who are new in this NIL space that maybe have experience in other fields And that could be good or it could be bad. It kind of depends on what the experience is. There's no one size fits all. So I would just ask for examples because you want to see what kind of NIL deals they're getting for athletes who are in a similar situation to you, the same sport, the same number of followers. What are they getting for those people? Because that'll give you a pretty good idea of what they might be able to get for you. Along those lines, I would also ask them, how are you proactively finding me new NIL deals? The number one complaint I have heard from athletes who have signed with agents is that their agent is only doing the deals that they, the athlete, bring to them. So things from their DMs or people who email them or reach out to them or meet them in an event. Then the agent's stepping in and they're negotiating it, but they're not bringing any new deals to the table. So I would specifically ask, how are you going to proactively go out and find me new deals? Maybe they already have relationships with certain brands and they know the brands they can go to that are going to be a good fit for you. That would be great news, but I would ask them that question. Obviously, you're also going to want to ask them about their fee structure. You're going to want to know, how do they get paid? Okay, most of the time they're going to take a percentage of the deals that you get. Industry standard would be 15 to 20%. There are a few out there that are doing 10%. That's great. You get to keep more of your money. But there's also some out there that are taking 30, 35, 40, even 50% of the deals. That is not industry standard. I would try to negotiate that down or find an agent who's in that 15 to 20% range because that is what would be considered industry standard here. You also want to know, are they only going to take a percentage of the deals that they get, or are they also going to take a percentage of the deals that you find on your own, or that maybe your school's collective finds for you? How is the agent going to get involved on those? And are they going to bring enough value to the table for it to be worth whatever percentage they're going to take? So if they're going to come in and they're going to negotiate with your collective and they're going to negotiate the terms of the contract, fine, they might have earned their percentage. But if they are taking a percentage of everything you do and they're not really actively doing anything to help you with that deal, that might not be worth it. It's a particular problem with speaking agents, and I've experienced that myself and a lot of other speakers I know, where a lot of our speaking engagements come into our inbox, and then our agent wants to take a percentage of something that came to us that we didn't need any help negotiating. And if you did nothing, then I probably don't want to pay you that percentage. So I would ask about that up front. Another important question I like is to ask, how would you say that you've advanced your athletes off the field? That's a really open question and it could get some interesting answers. And particularly if you're talking to more than one agent and you're trying to compare them, this could give you a good idea of how involved they're going to be and how much value they're really going to bring to the table and how much they're thinking about your brand and the things that are the right fit for you and about your future even after sport. We talked earlier, I said communication is really important and that that's one of the top complaints people have. So I would ask, what is your communication style? How often am I going to hear from you? Am I just going to get updates? Am I only going to hear from you when you have a deal to put in front of me? What is that going to look like? Is it by text? Is it by email? Is it by phone? You want someone who has a communication style that fits with your own. Like, I hate getting on the phone, so I don't really want an agent who constantly wants to get on the phone. I want somebody that's going to email me or text me. And that was a question I asked when I was hiring my last literary agent. I would also ask them if they're registered with the state. Now, not every state requires this, so this is not a like deal breaker kind of question, but if they are registered as an agent in one or more states, that's going to give you a little more peace of mind that this is somebody who's reputable and credible and has experience because they've gone through that process. Because like I said, currently the NCAA does not require agents to register. It's voluntary and there's no standard. There's no test they have to take or anything like that, whereas the pro leagues do require that. But another important question you can ask, even better than the registration question, is have you ever been disbarred, suspended, or otherwise disciplined related to your profession? Have you ever been investigated by the NCAA or another professional organization? Super important questions to ask. I would Google their name just to make sure you see all the information that's out there about them, but I would directly ask them that question as well. Additionally, I would ask them, what services do you offer beyond just contract negotiation? Because a lot of agents are just going to be there to, get deals. Maybe they've already got some brands they've got contacts with and they know they can hook you up with, and they can get you the contract, negotiate it, get it signed. But you want to know, do they offer anything bigger? Like maybe if they're at a bigger agency, they've got somebody there that provides financial services. Maybe they're not an attorney, but there's an attorney inside the agency that can look over things. I would just ask, what other services do they offer, or are you just getting contract negotiation? This is one that happened to me. What happens to our relationship if you change agencies? Would I go with you, or would I be assigned a new agent? So, this would obviously not be if you're with a solo agent, but if you're with an agent who's inside of an agency. This happened to me with my first broadcast agent. He left and went to another agency, and I got stuck at the original agency. I did not have a good relationship with anyone there. I did not want to be with them. I wanted to be with the agent I signed with, and I had to wait an entire year to be able to switch and go be with my original agent. So I always ask that question now. I think that the answers to those questions are going to tell you a lot about the agent. And in particular, if you talk to more than one agent, which I would highly recommend, so that you can compare the way that they're answering these questions. I don't even have to tell you what the right answers are. The right answers are going to look different for everyone, but these should uncover some important things. And if they answer some of these questions and some of these answers are a red flag, or they make you pause, hesitate, then that might not be the right agent for you. So I would ask these questions. I would try to interview more than one agent so that you can make an informed decision. Another thing that I wanted to talk to you about as we sort of move into this new space with revenue sharing, and potentially in the future, if there were ever to be anytime collective bargaining agreement, or even now there's collective agreements in the sense of group licensing deals. How do you navigate those types of agreements? And if you have an agent, then great. Your agent can probably help you with that. But outside of that, I would say before signing any kind of contract with a brand, with a collective, with any sort of group, I would get a lawyer to look over it. We've got a whole list of lawyers who are happy to help student athletes, many of whom offer a free legal consultation on businessofcollegesports.com. And also, many schools now, the law schools at your school have a legal clinic. If you talk to somebody in your athletic department that deals with NIL, they can probably direct you towards some resources to get an attorney to look over an agreement before you sign it. Because I'm going to run down a few things you may run into, real things that I've seen athletes run into already that have become problematic for them. So when you look at an NIL contract, and I hope you're getting an attorney to look at it, but some of the things that might come up that could be problematic are if you see a term that talks about perpetuity, if it says they have rights to your content or to your NIL in general in perpetuity, that means forever. That means they've got the right to whatever it is. If it's just that one piece of content, they can use that one piece of content forever. The more dangerous contracts I've seen, you're giving up rights to your name, image, and likeness in perpetuity. And I see it more often in collective contracts than I do in brand contracts, although I've seen it in both. And that means 5 years from now, if you're playing in the NFL and you're a star NFL player and you signed away the rights to your NIL in perpetuity to a collective or to a brand or someone else you worked with while you're in college, now they get to market and make money off of you as an NFL player because you signed away your rights back then. And that's the problem we see people running into is in college, they're signing these contracts that are following them into both their professional athlete and just their general professional career. And somebody that they no longer have conversations with or any kind of relationship with can now use their name, image, and likeness for all sorts of things sometimes. So you want to be aware of that language about in perpetuity. If it's just for a single piece of content or like a few posts, it might be okay that they have the right to use it in perpetuity, but you should be getting paid more for it. Anytime you agree to something in perpetuity forever, you should be getting paid more than if, say, they could only use it for 6 months or they could only use it for a year. That ties in nicely with the next term I want to talk about, which is exclusivity. Again, if this word's in there, you should be getting paid more for it. And it means that you are limiting the people you can work with. And so we most often see this in brand contracts. And so maybe you're working with a beauty brand and they say that for the next 6 months, they have exclusivity in the beauty category. You cannot sign with other brands in that space for the next 6 months. Well, they need to pay you more for that because you're going to potentially turn down other opportunities that come to you in the next 6 months. And so exclusivity should come with a higher payment rate than if it wasn't in the contract. So if you know what your content rate is for an Instagram story, but this company is asking for it for their category to be exclusive for the next 6 months, you're going to add on top of what you would normally charge for that post. And the answer to how much you're going to add on top of that really varies depending on what we're talking about. But just know exclusivity means you're foreclosing other opportunities. And so you should be getting paid more for it. I also like when they give a list of competitors I can't work with. Instead of just saying I can't work with anybody in the beauty space, that could be a very broad definition. So instead, I would like to have a list of the competitors of theirs that I'm not allowed to work with. And that's something that you can negotiate. A scary one that happens sometimes in contracts, and it's so often in there, talks about the brand having the right to edit or alter the content later. So you shoot a photo or video, and they're going to use it on their social feed or their website or somehow in their marketing. And in the contract, they have said that they have the sole discretion to edit or alter the content. Okay. Now, most of the time, hopefully, this just means maybe they're going to put a filter on it, or maybe your shirt's pink and they're going to change it to be red, something that you wouldn't necessarily have an issue with. But what if it's something you do have an issue with? And I saw this happen to an influencer. She did a photo shoot where her and the other models were wearing white t shirts and like jean shorts. And they were just plain white t shirts because this company made graphic tees. The company had the right to edit or alter. In the final ad that went out that she then saw on Facebook, they put a Confederate flag on the white t shirt. And that was something that she personally didn't want as part of her brand. It wasn't something that she wanted to promote. It wasn't something she felt good about. But in the contract, they had the sole right to edit or alter images. So she would have needed, and I think did, engage an attorney and try to get it taken down based on other things in the contract, or the attorney trying to get the contract totally thrown out. But it's problematic and is going to require involving an attorney. You can say that they have the right to edit or alter subject to your approval. So they would have to run it by you after they make the edit or the alteration, and then you would have to say okay to that. That's what we want to see. In general, some of what I've seen in contracts that's problematic is just vague language. So the best example is when, say, they're going to pay you $10,000, and then when it gets to the part where it talks about what the $10,000 is for, it says that you are going to create social media photos and videos, and make personal appearances at the request of the brand. Well, how many posts? How many photos? How many videos? How many times are you showing up to appear? There needs to be a specific number of things that you're doing for the amount of money that you're getting. It shouldn't be vague. It shouldn't be something that comes later, because how can you evaluate if they're paying you enough money if you don't know how much you're doing for that money? So you need to know exactly what's expected of you for the amount of money that they have offered. The last thing I want to say about contract terms is that there should always be we call it a termination clause. It's almost always there, but it usually just allows for the brand or the collective or the agent to terminate you. Okay, it'll say that they have the right, if certain things happen or with a certain number of days notice, to terminate the contract. There should also be one where you have the right to terminate, because what if you're working with an agent who does something you don't agree with and you want to get out of it? Or what if you're working with a brand and then they do something publicly that you don't agree with at all and that you don't want to be associated with? There needs to be a way for you to get out of the contract too, not just a way for them to get out of the contract. Something else I was asked to share with you is the idea of intellectual property and what you need to know about it. And this is something you will see in contracts as well. It'll talk about not only your intellectual property, so your right to your name, image, and likeness, but also your right to any logos that perhaps you have created. It also, on the other side, applies to brands and to schools in terms of their logos and their jerseys and even their color combination. So there've actually been legal cases where someone who created a t-shirt that had the purple and gold colors for LSU and an outline of the state of Louisiana, but it did not say LSU. It did not use their logo. It was just their colors and an outline of the state of Louisiana. And that was found by the court to be a problem because the court said, well, people will know that they mean LSU, even though they don't say it. And so you need to be really careful when you enter into a deal with a brand or some other third party for an NIL deal, and they want you to use something that really the school owns, their logo, their color scheme, even a facility on campus. You are going to need to get permission from the school for that. And sometimes there's a fee associated with, say, using the school logo, and the brand is going to need to pay that. You shouldn't be paying that, but you are going to need to go to them. Tell them what the contract is asking for, what the brand wants. You're probably ultimately going to put the brand in touch with somebody in your athletic department or at your university to ensure that you have the right to use their intellectual property. But also, everything we've been talking about, especially with contracts with brands and collectives, is their right to use your intellectual property, your name, image, and likeness, which is protected. They can't just use it without your permission or without both your permission and compensation. Last but not least, I wanted to hit on something for the parents out there and talk about what I think are probably the three most important things parents should know about NIL and focus on. And that is, we've talked about it a little bit already, but working with reputable people and companies. There have been many people and many companies that have come into this NIL space and are providing valuable services to the industry. Unfortunately, there have also been others coming into the space who are taking advantage of athletes or just trying to make a quick buck off of this new industry. And so I encourage you when someone reaches out to you, either to be your agent or a brand or a collective that wants to work with you, spend some time on Google, look them up. Who are these people? What were they doing before NIL? What are they doing now? And look for athletes who have worked with them and then go talk to those athletes. Shoot them a DM and say, I saw you did something with this brand. How did that work out? Or I saw you were represented by this agent. Tell me about your experience. I ended up not hiring the literary agent I thought I was going to hire this last time that I was hiring one because I talked to a current and a former client who had nothing good to say about this agent. It completely changed my mind. It was the agent I was going to sign with, and talking to a current and a former client completely changed my mind, and I signed with somebody else that I'm very happy with. So do your research on these people and companies and talk to athletes or other influencers who've already worked with them. Also, look for terms that don't extend beyond graduation. I talked earlier about perpetuity, but sometimes these can even be 2-year deals, 4-year deals, 5-year deals, 10-year deals. If this deal extends beyond your time in college sports into your career as a professional athlete or even just into your life after sport, that could be problematic. I would have any deals that you're doing end at graduation, and then you always have the opportunity to renew or extend those deals, but you might be in a very different situation after graduation and either not want to work with this brand or this person anymore or want it to look different. You could be worth more by then. So you just don't want deals that are too long where you outgrow the deal and you're stuck in it. And then last but not least, and I sort of mentioned this already, but there are resources out there to help you with legal issues. Please seek legal advice about any contract that's being signed with an agent, a collective, a brand, with the school, with anyone. There are lawyers out there willing to look at this, including lawyers who are out there willing to look at this for free. And so make sure you are getting the assistance you need before you sign things that will come back to haunt you later. I enjoyed chatting with you a little bit. Obviously, there's a lot that could be said on this, but we're trying to keep this digestible for you. And so if you have questions, I'm always available for you to reach out to. Again, I own businessofcollegesports.com. There's a contact page there. My name is Kristi Dosh, and I'm also available at Kristi@KristiDosh.com and on all the social media channels as Sports Biz Miss. That's Sports Bizmiss. I look forward to hearing from you and best of luck with your NIL efforts. There are so many wonderful opportunities out there, and I can't wait to see what you do with them.